Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, I want to remind everyone not to spoil anything in the comments because, one, if I'm going to look at the comments, I can't have things spoiled for me because it'll just ruin it for my enjoyment. But I think it also, to some extent, ruins the format of what I'm doing here. Also, number two, many of the viewers don't watch the show. They haven't watched the show and are watching it just through this series. So you don't want to spoil it for them either. So just keep that in mind as you are commenting below. I encourage comments, of course, but there's ways around actually talking directly about things, and 99% of people know to do that and will do that. But my wife told me that someone spoiled something pretty severe in a recent video, and it had to the comment had to be deleted for that reason. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to look at the comments, and all the other people would have had that spoiled. So just keep that in mind, just as a courtesy. Let's watch.
I just want you to acknowledge that, I have these jealousy issues, and if I were to be giving attention to another guy, how would it make you feel?
Obviously, it's just not something I'm comfortable with imagining.
I don't know what to say about stuff like this, because on one hand, I'm like, this is totally unfair. But Mary was the one, according to her, who pushed Cody originally to marry other women. So this is seemingly the narrative anyway, is that she's most of the reason. Now, of course, if she's been brainwashed, she can't be responsible for the brainwashed notions in her brain. But so on one hand, as I'm watching this, and maybe this is the whole appeal of the show, is it just causes you to bounce back and forth around, I don't know. But on the other hand, it's incredibly wrong for him to say he doesn't want to imagine it because his wives are living it. He can't even just entertain the idea. I mean, what she's wanting here ultimately is for she's saying, I just want you to acknowledge that it's hard for me. And I just wonder if behind the scenes, he is the one pushing for the courtship of Robin, because the way they were laying it out on the interviews was the women, the wives, are the ones saying, hey, we need another. And then he was secretly kind of courting, but they were thinking anyway. I just don't know what's happening. But anyway, so she's looking for some acknowledgement. All he has to do is say, hey, it's hard for me to imagine what it would be like to have you have other husbands, but I will say that I totally acknowledge that it's hard for you, and I get it. I get that this can be hard. This is a principle we can all learn from. I think, regardless of how healthy you are as a communicator, as an emotionally intelligent individual, all of us can use to some improvement in this area of when someone's trying to tell us something, even if they kind of do it in a convoluted way. She did it pretty clearly, but it's a little convoluted in that she is saying, she started out by saying, I just want some acknowledgement for how hard it is for me, or my feelings. And then she's, as a way to try to push him to acknowledge, because he either doesn't typically acknowledge or she doesn't trust him to acknowledge, or both, she has to bring up this thought experiment to him of just like, imagine if I had other husbands, or I was dating other people. That's a way to try to push him into being in her shoes, right? Hopefully we don't have to do that with our spouses. We can just say, I'm feeling this way, and I would just like some acknowledgement, some empathy, some understanding. We shouldn't have to walk people through things. Now, sometimes we have to, because our spouses or people in our life don't have therapists, or they haven't progressed far enough, or they don't really think about this sort of thing. It's unfortunate that this is the case. But anyway, it's convoluting a little bit, because now he's focused on this idea, this thought experiment, instead of on what I think she really needs, which is just acknowledgement, right? So we can all think about how when our partners or people in our life are looking for acknowledgement, we might get convoluted communications like this. It might even be something like, Mary might be in a bad mood or might be distant or something, and that's her way of passively, or at least coping, or passively asking or requesting for acknowledgement for how she feels. So we might get very indirect requests for us to acknowledge, but so much of what we need from people in our life is acknowledgement and empathy, attunement. This is the basis of John Bowlby's attachment theory that I adhere to quite significantly, in that we all desire from the time we're born throughout our life for our loved ones to notice our emotional state most of the time, and after noticing our emotional state, respond to us in a caring way, in a way that makes us feel like we have a secure base. It doesn't mean that all of our wishes and wants get entertained all the time, but at least people know us, they understand us, they are in our corner, they're on our side, they are trying to help, even if they can't. Like if your partner comes to you and is just like, hey, I'm just having a really tough day, and they seem to be giving some indication that they want some acknowledgement. On one hand, you might feel like, oh, I have to make their day less tough, but you are having a tough day yourself. So you might say like, look, I'm having a tough day too, and okay, that's one thing to say, but it might be 90% what your partner needs is just acknowledgement, just like, yeah, I see that, and I think that's reasonable, and if I could do something about it, I would, but I'm having a tough day too. It's so important, and I can't tell you how many times I've had couples in my office who have been struggling with this, maybe not doing it at all, but at least not enough, for 20 years, and their marriage has gone down the tubes because of this one detail. If you can learn one thing from this channel, honestly, is that if you can recognize, even when it's hard to do, even when you're just like, hey, I don't get a lot of acknowledgement from other people, someone's got to be the adult in the room. Someone's got to get the ball rolling. And sometimes you just have to take a guess, and because especially for people that have never had it before, or if your relationship doesn't really have it much, it's so soothing and so trust building and so goodwill building to acknowledge, even when they're not being overt about it. And of course, this has to do with kids. Of course, this is more important for kids because they can't engineer their life. They depend on us to do this for them. But really for everyone, is just pay attention most of the time for indications of emotion, any sort of emotion, even if it's joy, right? It's like, oh, you're really enjoying this. So, I see that. But, you see some indication of emotion, and then you name it and you acknowledge it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to deny your feelings. It's just that. It's just limited to that moment. It might blossom into other things, like you changing something or trying to help or something. But most people jump to those other things. They'll just be like, well, what am I, you see an indication from your partner and you're just like, well, I can't fix it. What am I supposed to do with it? Or even if it has to do with you, they're sad because you're being a jerk face, and you're thinking, I wasn't a jerk face. I was justified. Okay. But if you want to improve things, and at the very least, you want them to stop being so upset selfishly, acknowledging they're just like, hey, I see you and I get it. And although it might be hard for me right now to fully understand where you're coming from, I'm just going to assume that your feelings are valid because I love you and I care. And most of the time, you're a rational individual. But even if you're being irrational, you're still having a feeling, and I acknowledge it and I see it and I care. Sometimes you can just end it there. You don't even have to fix it. Your partner is upset at you that you did something last week, and you just do that, you don't even have to fix what happened in the past. You don't have to apologize necessarily. You don't. It'd be nice if you did all those other things as well. But sometimes that's all we're looking for. So that's all she's looking for. And so she convolutes. He doesn't attune properly, and now he's in this state of the thought experiment, which he's saying, I don't even want to think about that. It's not very helpful.
The vulgarity of the idea of you with two husbands or another lover.
Wait, what's he saying here? The vulgarity. Oh, let's rewind.
It's just not something I'm comfortable with imagining. The vulgarity of the idea of you with two husbands or another lover sickens me.
Yeah, from the outside, it just seems so backward and hypocritical. And of course, and they don't go into this, and I doubt they ever will, but the gender notions, in my neck of the woods, there's no difference regarding gender when it comes to these issues of fairness and jealousy and infidelity or having other partners. If you're going to offer polyamory, for example, then it's not like men have the right to ask for that, but women don't. You know what I mean? In my world, it's just people talking to people regardless of gender. But in their world, in all likelihood, God has told them through possibly even scripture, because you can actually point to examples in the Bible of polygamy, at least from my memory. Don't quote me on that, pretty sure. Anyway, that it's vulgar for women to have two husbands. That's like against nature. It's against God. It's disgusting. It's ridiculous. But for a man to have multiple women, well, that's God's way. That's beautiful, right? So I don't necessarily blame him for the indoctrination that he has been subjected to, but and the women probably see it that way too. Yeah, they probably are thinking, yeah, that is vulgar. That's ridiculous. But from the outside, you're just like, you don't hear what's happening right now. Like, listen to what you're saying.
It seems wrong to God and nature, and understand this seems...
Right, it seems wrong to God and nature because it has been taught that way, I'm guessing. Yeah, it's wrong to God, and I literally just said that.
Somewhat hypocritical. I don't know how to get around it.
Okay, so...
And then he says it seems hypocritical. He seems real focused. It's good that he acknowledged that, I guess, but he seems real focused on the thought experiment and not on acknowledging your feelings. I will say they're editing it. There's evidence of facial expression suddenly changing, so maybe he did acknowledge it, and they're just focusing on this sensational bit.
There's just me answering this question. There's no way for me to win. Okay, let me tell you, the emotion
I'm not trying to win.
It's not something I ever want to deal with. I get that.
Oh,
it's a
you get that? What do you get? Tell me what you get.
Well, I feel like I'm admitting that what I'm doing is completely and totally unfair.
Yeah, this is common for all relationships, not just these types. That when you have this is related to what I was saying earlier, that your partner says something that is upsetting to them about something that you're doing. Like, say you're under a lot of pressure at work and you're working 60 hours a week, and your partner comes to you and says, I feel hurt and angry that you're not paying enough attention to me, or you're not spending time with me. And there's a request of acknowledge it, have empathy, care. That's the baseline, typically. Whether the individual even knows it or not. They might actually be overtly or consciously asking for change and a commitment to change. But in my experience, and I see this in my office, there will be a conversation along these lines, and the request will be behavioral change, but I'll experiment with acknowledgement of emotions first, and often the request for behavioral change will disappear because people are usually used to operating in that realm of behavioral change instead of emotional acknowledgement, because it doesn't seem tangible, but it is very tangible. Anyway, so she's asking for acknowledgement, and he's saying in his head, this is all happening outside of the conversation. He's like, okay, she's upset with me, and therefore I have to change something. I have to not date Robin. Maybe I even have to only be with Mary. He could be going there in his head. And that is not possible for him. That's not what she's asking for. She hasn't said anything along those lines. But in his head, he's thinking that's what she's asking for. And then he also feels like, well, wait a second. So you have a bad feeling, and you're saying it's because of something that I did. Therefore, I did something wrong, but I didn't mean to. And people do this all the time. There's like, I don't understand why you're upset. I didn't mean to cause you upsettedness. And I just feel like we need to spread the word out there that 99% of the time, when your partner is hurt by something you did not set out to hurt them. You know, you're living your life and you're making all your random choices. You're going to hurt people around you, not because you're a jerk face, but because, you know, there's conflicts of interest, there's other factors in your life, and there's priorities, and there's misunderstandings, which is a big one. So this notion that your partner could be upset at you, tell you that they're upset at you, and you didn't intend on hurting them, that should be understood as the norm. So he's going to this place of just like, wait, so I'm being blamed, but I need to defend myself, and I just need to say, you need to stop this feeling. And then this blossoms into misunderstanding and hurt feelings, and then distance, and then divorce. Whereas all he has to say is, I see you, and I would imagine if I were in your shoes, I would feel the same way. And I don't know what to do about it, but yeah, I see you and I care. I'm guessing that is all that she wants right now.
I feel like if I go and address that emotion, it's just an unhealthy place to go.
It's there every day, and it's in my face, and it's in Janelle's face, and it's in Christine's face. And it's something that we've chosen, and it's something that we're okay with, and it's something that I know is going to help me grow and be a better person.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there. She's saying that she's choosing it, so that's good for her to. I mean, outside of polygamy, if you are in her shoes and you're trying to get someone to empathize with you, it helps to have explanation and caveats to it, especially if you see the person you're communicating to spinning out of control, because they're usually operating or assuming something that isn't true. He's assuming that she wants him to change, or that she's blaming him or something. So she intuits that, I think, and is getting out ahead of that by saying, look, we all have this feeling, and we choose this. And I think what she's saying is, I just want some acknowledgement. But what did he say earlier? This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I remember as a kid, the adults in my life would talk about how the older that they got, the faster that time moves by. And I even remember as a kid, when I was like 10 years old, thinking that when I was younger, time moved more slowly. Now, there are a few reasons for this phenomenon, but one of the reasons seems to be that the older we get, the more we fall into a routine and we stop really paying attention to our lives. Well, of course, therapy can be a wonderful place to slow things down and give us a chance to focus on things. Generally speaking, therapists are pretty good at creating a space for us to do that. And sometimes it seems like we need that outside influence to get us to slow down. Well, one place you can find a therapist is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So take a moment, visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I feel like if I go and address that emotion, it's just an unhealthy place to go.
I feel like if I go to that emotion, it's an unhealthy place to go. Yeah, this is another common foible in these scenarios of, if I acknowledge it or allow it or give it oxygen, then it's just going to grow and get worse and worse, and then we'll be better off. I just need you to suppress this and get rid of it. She will say right now of the fact that you want to make it go away doesn't make it go away. You understand? We all feel this way. But we chose it. So she's trying to get out ahead of that, saying, look, we choose this, and I would like some acknowledgement. But I also just wonder if for the three of them, because they haven't had to deal with any transitions like this for something like 16 years, because they've all been married that whole time, and now this is the first time there's someone new, and so they're all struggling with it, particularly Mary and Christine. And for Mary, I think she seems to have the role of like the primary communicator to him. Like she has the most clout, the most rank or something. They seem to talk like that. So she's not only speaking for herself, but for her sister wives. And, she, what did she say?
It's there every day, and it's in my face, and it's in Janelle's face, and it's in Christine's face. And it's something that we've chosen, and it's something that we're okay with, and it's something that I know is going to help me grow and be a better.
Right. It's going to help her grow and be a better person. I just think, challenges do help us to grow, potentially. But you don't want to force problems in your life just so that you can have an opportunity to grow. For me, I suppose if someone close to me died, then I would be challenged to grow. So it'd be an opportunity for that. But I'm not going to hope the universe kills someone in my family. You know what I mean? Or I'm not going to set up a scenario to put my family in danger to have someone die. She's like, this is going to help me grow. Okay, but is this good? So I'm also wondering if this new edition of Robin is causing the three of them to question a lot of things. If this is ultimately what they want, polygamy, and even just being married to him, I'm getting that kind of vibe of like, but maybe, it's a transition and they're stating that they all want this. I don't know.
Better person. What I would like from you is like just the acknowledgement that, I do have these issues and feelings, and just some understanding. Great.
So she's being communicative. She's not escalating. She's not being hostile. She's being kind of a broken record because she has to be. These are all things that I tell people to do when they're communicating. You don't want to throw something out there, get a bad response, and then throw your hands up. If you care about the relationship, even with good communicators, you have to be a broken record. You just keep going, and trust and give people the opportunity. A lot of eye contact. She's not being hostile. She's not escalating in her distress or her accusations. She's caveating. She's reacting to what he's saying, and she's, okay, having said all that, I'm looking. This is what I would like from you. This is great communication. If you're talking with your partner, you want to know first and tell them what you are looking for, and you want it to be reasonable, and it's reasonable. So let's see what he does.
Patience, I think.
The idea that you're jealous and that you struggle with things, I understand that.
I think that there's been times that you haven't seemed like you've understood.
Okay, they're editing it, but he says that he sees it. It didn't seem like much of an acknowledgement, but, is there. And then she says, it seems like, this is kind of a secondary talk. So if I were a little birdie on her shoulder, I would say, thank him for that bit. And then subject to, because this is one of the things that happens in couples that I see in my office, is that when you're in a zone where you're finally talking real and authentically, you can sometimes, if you've been putting off talking about something, a lot comes out all at once, and it can be overwhelming. Plus, if you're in his shoes, you can feel like you can't do anything right. So when he did that right thing, which I think is what she was looking for, although lackluster it was in the direction, she could say, hey, thanks for that. Second topic here, I feel like in the past you haven't really acknowledged. She said something earlier as well, because when he was talking about how he was, she was like, really? You do care? So it seemed like this is a resentment that's building up over time.
And you've seemed very impatient. I mean, you've actually said to me, you chose this. This is what we signed up for.
Right.
Unfortunately, at the same time, I still have those emotions and I still have those feelings.
Right. So she's being explicit about when I do bring up these feelings, you will attack me or shut it down, imply that I'm blaming you or something, and that's not what I'm doing. She's saying earlier, we did choose this, but I'm just looking for some acknowledgement. I'm just trying to think of a more typical example that is to more mainstream families. Like, let's say you're frustrated with parenting and maybe you made a choice to stay home with the kids and it was your choice. It was your decision. You understood the pros and the cons, but you went with staying home with the kids. And your spouse comes home and you're struggling with the downside of staying home with the kids. You miss colleagues, you miss building your career, you resent your partner for having that break from the kids and having that success. And you feel alone and you go to your partner and you say, hey, I just want some acknowledgement that what I'm doing here is hard and I'm sacrificing a lot for this family. And then your spouse says like, hey, well, you chose this. This is my idea. You could see someone doing that. Don't do that. This is not, you can acknowledge something and not take the blame for it, even if you are kind of to blame in a sense, but, just say, hey, or let me try that on for size. So what are you saying? You're saying that it's hard for you. You inquire a little bit, and you get to know it. And the thing that I do when I'm in these shoes, when I'm at my best, which is definitely not all the time, is I just try to step outside of me for a second. And I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but I try to step out of the implication of what this feeling means. Just like, okay, I'm feeling myself getting tweaked right now, so I'll just put that aside for now in terms of the implication of this emotion and what it would mean for the future, or am I being blamed or something? Just put my ego aside and the future aside and behavioral change requests aside and just like, okay, what are you telling me? Okay, yeah, I could see that. Oh, and you want me to actually switch roles with you. That's what you're saying, so you want me to stay home with the kids and you want to go to work. That's what you really want. There is so much regulatory mechanisms. That's a weird sentence. It's very regulatory to the relationship in terms of bringing distress down and adrenaline down when you can do that. Once that's done, then you can say, okay, putting myself back in me again. Are you saying you want me to change? Is this a request? What's going on here? And then you can have that conversation. But since you've established the foundation of empathy and understanding and acknowledgement, it's going to go a lot better. Plus, if you fully understand your partner's feelings and what's going on with them, then you'll be operating on the planning phase to maybe address or fix the problem, understanding where they're coming from, which isn't usually the case. In his head, he would hear this jealousy issue or this concern issue from her. And I think for him, he thinks he's being asked to completely upend his entire family, right? And take on the blame for everything that's happened. But that's not what's happening. So he's operating from an assumption rather than actually what's being said. So it's, I'm trying to relate this to mainstream people.
In fact, I have an idea.
What's that?
I actually think that maybe we should go ahead and
Okay, interesting. So they've been having their 20th anniversary celebration together, and he is suggesting they do in vitro fertilization. I'm not exactly sure what the context here is. Was this a barrier in the past? Has she wanted more kids? It seemed like, well, anyway, let's see what she says. I don't see the point. I don't see the point. If I were there, I would eventually want to hear more about that, because that's important for her to have a voice, and it's important for him to know what that voice says, because that statement's a little vague. I would also wonder, and if I were him, I would say, tell me more about what you're saying there, because I would hope that she would be able to say, I want this, I don't want that, instead of I don't see the point. You know, like that statement could mean something like, well, I want to, of course, but I don't see the point because you're going to be spread so thin, or, you know, whatever it is. So I wonder what, maybe she'll elaborate.
When he asked me if
So I don't know if we're going to get more in the moment, but she's going to give maybe more context here in an interview later.
doing the in vitro, how I felt about it. I felt really, really, really guilty, and I knew I was going to break his heart, but I told him probably not.
I was actually floored. I was just surprised. I didn't know what to do. I was dumbfounded.
I don't understand what the background, where is he coming from? They haven't had a kid together in 14 years. So has there been asks, you know, maybe, so if I'm going to take a guess, I'm going to say that they had their initial child and she wanted more children, but it was hard to get pregnant, or maybe there was miscarriages or something. And then, wait, did I take notes on this? Going to the Mary portion of my notes here. I don't see anything more here regarding what's going on. So that's my assumption. And then they just lived their lives, and he always knew that she wanted more kids. And so for him, they hadn't updated their conversation on that. And she had decided that she wanted to live a different future. And then when he offered, he thought he was offering something that she really wanted, because he said it's a gift to her.
I'd like another.
Right, and then the other part of this is that people have been saying how much he loves kids and wants a lot of kids. And on a certain level, I can relate. There's nothing wrong, of course, with someone liking the children, and wanting your own children. There's that relatability, but then, you think, well, you already have how many? 13, right? Kids? What about what everyone else wants? Why do you always get what you want? Well, I guess there's potentially now 3 more, so 16. I mean, he has 3 stepkids coming along. And I think that those stepkids are going to be primarily fathered by him, because of the insular nature of their group. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Who knows if the bio dad's going to be involved that much, but it sounds like maybe not, particularly if they live farther away from where the biological dad.
And we're getting to the point where it's almost too late.
Three years ago,
We had a second pregnancy.
we ended up pregnant just out of the blue. And we were so ecstatic about that. And that was such a cool thing. And 12 weeks later, we lost it.
Okay, so that's context. And does that mean that the whole time they were having unprotected sex? This kind of sounds like that, right? That they were always open to having more children, the two of them. And then randomly, a few years ago, she gets pregnant, and then, she says, we were so ecstatic. I don't know. If I were there, I'd say, like, okay, so the two of you, how did you feel about it? Because it would be bizarre if she didn't have some reservations, right? If there weren't, it's always the case. Even when you're, doing everything to get pregnant, and you find out that you're pregnant, you're celebrating. There's always, if you fully understand the weight of the situation, there's always worries or concerns or sacrifices. So if there was nothing there, but anyway, I don't know, so that's where he's operating from. Is he understood that she wanted another child, and so he's offering that, and then he's surprised, like, wait, I thought a few years ago. But people can change their mind. It also just makes me wonder if she actually was really 100% on board a few years ago.
It would be awesome to have another one. And if it happened naturally, that would be the most amazing thing. But I don't feel like forcing the issue.
I haven't been told no in a strong enough fashion yet to actually think that it means no yet.
There's just so many things. If this was a different context, it'd be so different. But it just, the context, like, no means yes. Yikes. But she's saying, okay, well, that gives, I think, I'd want to know more information. But I think what she was saying earlier of, I don't see the point, is she's saying, I'm going to lose the child. I'm going to miscarry again. And I don't want to get my hopes up. I think that's what she's saying, which would indicate that she was open and that he would be working on her best interests by having this point of view. It sounds like she's laughing about it, but I don't know. It also just makes you wonder, because she was saying earlier, it's like, I don't want to disappoint him. There's not a lot of her in this equation, unfortunately. All right, well, that does it for that episode. My wife just texted me asking me if I want a sandwich and took a picture of the menu, and I just said that I'll have the shill. Also, I want to open some fan mail, so if you want to send some fan mail or gifts or something, I will sometimes open it up on the air, sometimes not. It's just kind of random, honestly. But we have one here. Sorry for yelling that into the microphone. This is from Maya, looks like. You have very good handwriting, so I'll read this letter later, but then there's a mystery item or items in this bag. What is it? And do I need my reading glasses to tell what these things are? They're individually wrapped. They look very promising. Ooh, I don't know if you could see it, but it's a little like a little bull. Looks like fancy hand-painted bull. Two of them. Oh, there's a blue one. That is pretty cool. I like stuff like this. I actually collect little items like these. See if I can get it to focus. Focus. Sometimes if I put my hand in front, it'll focus on. There we go. These guys. I collect little things like this, particularly cats and birds. I don't know if I'm asking you to send me those things. That seems weird, but there's a chance that if you send me a cat or a bird, then it'll end up in my house somewhere. These guys I like as well because, I don't know, they're really cool looking, It's not just like a typical knickknack. Oh, I'm guessing in the letter here, it goes over what these things are, but I'm scanning. Anyway, so thank you for that. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.